Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not Too Comic Book. This being a show where I talk about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about Go Go Loser Ranger Season 1, Episode 2. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. So we're picking up where the last episode left off. We have D, in disguise as a human, trying to infiltrate the Rangers. Obviously, his plan wasn't necessarily fully like, oh, I'm going to get stronger, but it's just like, right, by hiding amongst them, he get closer to the keepers and being able to take them out, which isn't a well thought out plan, but he was just frustrated and angry for the past 13 years of defeat that he's not really thinking. He's just like, I got some idea. It's not a well thought out plan, but it's an idea. He posited an interesting question early on in the episode, and we get answers to that. That is the larger question of, well, we know that the keepers have kept up this deal with the monsters for the past 13 years, but the biggest question then becomes, well, how many people in the organization know? So it doesn't seem, maybe like higher ranked people definitely know, it just depends. Maybe like the more junior and senior members, because later on when the keepers decide that they're going to like change up the deal with the monsters a little bit, they have two members from the blue battalion staking out. It's like, right, some of the blue battalion is going to stay here to basically keep the monsters in line. That way we don't have to worry about you guys kind of going all wild on us, kind of doing your own thing, freestyling. It's like, no, you got to keep to the script. You got to keep doing what we tell you to do. Every Sunday we go to battle, yada yada yada, so on and so forth. So that's interesting. So there are some members who know, but generally speaking, obviously the public doesn't know, but generally speaking, not everyone in the organization knows. Which, speaking on that, we do get a little bit more structure in the organization. Each one, obviously one of the Rangers leads their own battalions. Each one of the battalions seem to have a main designation on what they do. Like the Reds, it seems like they are the main monster exterminators. We find out that Yellows are R&D. There's also another group, there's the white group that was it Sakumura? Is that his name? Belongs to, like, they're white, like they're unaffiliated. I don't know what that's about. It does seem like he is looked down upon more than any others, because I guess it's like, right, you've made the cut to be part of all of this, but not like you haven't proven yourself enough to belong to any particular organization. So I guess maybe they're on the lower end of the totem pole when it comes to like the hierarchy and stuff like that. Maybe he's just so fresh that he hasn't had enough. Like, I'm curious what the sorting process is. Like, I wonder, do you get to choose what battalion you become a part of, or do they decide to recruit you and you just have to wait? A lot of questions in that department, but also continue the conversation about the hierarchy. Who's above the keepers? Like, they seem to be the tip tops of their organization, but is there like a government organization above them that dishes out the orders, or are they like, does a buck stop with them? Like, they run everything. It's unclear. It's also interesting too, very boss level ish, where like each one of them has their own battalion and territory. So yes, there's like the main HQ, but they're rarely there. They're at their own. Relatively speaking, they're typically at their own battalion. So I think that's interesting. And kind of going back to the conversation really quickly about how much do people know, it's interesting that D was talking to, like I said, is it Sakumura and Suzukiri about apparent, like he accidentally let it slip of like, oh, like, knowing how it's all fake, but apparently there's a video going around. So I'm like, I guess maybe some person knows the truth about this. Once again, they made it seem like there are monsters that left. Like at last episode, they kind of made it seem like there were monsters that abandoned this mission and just kind of scattered to the wind. So there could be other people out and about that they're just not aware of. Because it hasn't been shown so far that they can sense each other. So like D, if he ran into another like monster, he might not be able to tell. I mean, specifically if it's another duster, because obviously, the end of the episode, F was like, I don't know where you are, D, but but it's like, it's not like he could sense that D was somewhere in that crowd. So it's like, it's not like they have that ability. So they wouldn't even be able to recognize each other if they didn't like acknowledge to each other, like, hey. So that makes this Suzukiri thing really interesting, because I knew something was off about her, because like she was staring at him. And it's also interesting too, like out of any character design, she's the one that's got like this emptiness to her eyes, and I'm like, what is that about? Because something that had crossed my mind too is like, well, we know the bosses are dead, but what if we actually found, like, are we going to find out that the bosses are actually the keepers? Like, are they the, like, is that going to be like a twist, or are the keepers just regular humans? It feels like for the bosses to be dead and just like, that be it. I mean, that's a strong possibility. It could just be as simple as that, or maybe it is a thing of, maybe it isn't just the dusters that's scattered. Maybe the other like bosses did too, and they're hiding out too, or maybe it's a situation where, like I said, the keepers themselves are in fact the bosses just in disguise, because we don't know the delineation between between the dusters and their bosses. Like, are their bosses the same way? Because the dusters are immortal, but were the bosses not? Obviously not, since they can be killed. But this episode indicates there's also is a means of killing them, and that's using well, I don't know, because like the divine artifact was used last episode to defeat them, but they didn't die. So maybe that was just F standing his ground, just showcasing like, hey, I can be a part of this too. Like, for the first time, we've had to take these beatings for the past 13 years, but for the first time, I felt good. Even if it seemed meaningless, it felt good to stand my ground. Like, I've had to take it on the chin for too long, and I've had enough. So that's why I'm curious, like, how much of this is just going to be D's adventure versus how many other monsters are going to get in the mix and kind of have a similar idea. How many monsters will he recruit to his side, to his mission, Like I said, it kind of felt like that was kind of indicating that F died, but it's like, right, they used a divine artifact before and it didn't do anything, but maybe it's the difference of if you go full force with a divine artifact versus not, maybe that delineates whether or not they'll die. Like, how like truly immortal are they in grand scheme of things? Because it seems like the divine artifacts are what, it doesn't seem like it's what gives them their powers. That's, once again, that was a big question I had last episode too, of the dragon keepers. It's like, how much of that is like tech versus something else? So the artifacts seem to be like their main, most powerful weapons, but like the suits and stuff like that doesn't seem like that stems from that. It seems like maybe that's just technology that humans have that they've adapted to, make themselves that. Once again, we're scratching the surface of this story, so having not read the manga, I don't know like whether those questions ever really get answered. But it's just stuff like that, world building wise, I'm really curious about. Once again, like, how did this all really start? And I also was wondering too, this episode, especially because we got, what was his name, Takido, the guy who's like, oh, I'm gonna be the next Red. So I was like, these aren't positions for life. Like, other people can work their way up. I mean, it makes sense. Kind of even using like, well, I'll use my purview of Power Rangers specifically because I'm not well versed in all other Sentais. But, obviously different people have taken up those mantles over the years. So it's interesting, which made me go, I wonder have the keepers stay the same for the past 13 years? You'd assume so, because they're the ones who know. They're like, hey, we struck this deal with the monsters. So at bare minimum, Blue and Red have been there since the beginning. We don't know about the other three, whether they've been switched out over the years, but they seem to be just as much a part of this too. It could just be like, hey, we are the next generation. We've taken over these mantles, but we're in the know about everything. I mean, by becoming one of the new people, you probably end up finding out the truth about everything. It probably works like that. Like, oh, if you're going to join our ranks, you have to learn the truth. So begs the question, like, have they all stayed the same for the past 13 years? And would they be willing to pass that mantle on to anyone else? They've accumulated all this power. Absolute power corrupts absolutely and all that, right? So it could easily be a situation of they would never willingly give up that power. So, not unless it's a thing of, only way you're going to get it is if you kill them. I mean, because how much does the public really know about them being the keepers, who they really are? Because we met Red outside of his transformation, but like, how much does the general public know about it? It probably doesn't. So it's like, whoever's under that, like, it won't matter to the general public, because it's like, that's green, that's yellow, that's pink, that's blue, and that's red. That's all they'll see. They don't know about the people underneath. So questions like that is really interesting to me. I never thought about, like, I guess in my head, I just assumed that D would keep the same form the entire time. But it's like, no, when you're able to shapeshift, you might as well take advantage of that for infiltration purposes. I'm also curious, like, how he decided on his default form. Because, I mean, obviously, like, their transformation, well, I was about to say, never mind. They can just concoct stuff. Like, maybe he came up with this face because it makes you wonder, like, will he run into the real person he's based his human form around? But also, let's look at their monsters form. They just create those on the spot. So maybe there's a real D that's out, like what D's human form look like. Maybe there's one out there, or maybe it's like, no, my human form is an amalgamation of other stuff I came up with. Like, who knows? Maybe it will be something that the series will cover. But yeah, because he took on the form of like Sakurama to go with Suzukiri to infiltrate the Reds. Once again, he was just going to plan on going there with a knife. It's like, I don't know what you really expected to go down because you guys are sadly weak. But going back to it, because I brought it up earlier, was the Suzukiri of it all. I'm like, I wasn't expecting that, where she was just like, oh, I know, like the moment she's like, yeah, hand me that knife in your bag. I'm like, he didn't even realize. He's like, wait, did I tell you I had a knife? And she slices off his head, and it's like, yeah, I know what you are. She's like, the fact is you're too weak to do what you were going to do, but it's still impressive you held back. Even though Red was right in front of you, decided not to. So, hey, let's work together and destroy them. I'm like, are you someone, like, are you another monster? Are you another, like, are you a duster who left years ago and you've been slowly orchestrating this, or are you just a regular human who knows what kind of crap that they get up to? Once again, we've seen them in correlation to, like, that was the biggest thing I brought up last episode. Another big thing, I keep saying that, sorry, I keep being like, oh, the biggest thing, one of the core things I was bringing up last episode is the correlation and connection I have with the boys. And once I know what I know about the boys, because I've watched all of the seasons of the TV show, knowing how superheroes in that world were, my thing was like, all right, we know all of this is a lie, but how much other crap do they get up to that they, like, how terrible are they aside from just this deal where they orchestrated this whole facade with the monsters? How much of that, how much stuff do they get up to? So maybe that's where Suzukiri's story comes into place, why she wants to destroy this whole thing. Like, what is her deal in all of this? Like I said, dusters can't apparently sense each other, so she could easily have been one that's been in disguise for a very long time, and she's been waiting for her revenge, or like I said, she could just be a regular human out for revenge because of something. The fact that she's in the R&D department, I doubt that's by accident, especially when Hondu was like, hey, Suzukiri, you should transfer over. So it seems like she must be known as a pretty good fighter for them to want her over to the Red Battalion, but her being like, no, I like my job where it is. It's like, probably, like I said, we don't know the selection process, but it seems like she probably made an effort to specifically get an R&D. What is the R&D up to? Like, I'm assuming it's stuff related to the tech and stuff that the Keepers as well as all of the Rangers use, but there's also that element of, you know, what other, like, behind the scenes stuff, what are that shady, like, experiments and, you know, research and development are they doing? So that's going to be interesting to see. I touched on it a little bit earlier, but obviously the Keepers strolled up at the monster fortress and was like, yo, so are you all in league with D? Like, he's the one that kind of caused an issue. Are you all trying to renege on a deal? And they're like, no, that was him going his own way. Blue is kind of just like, yo, like, fall in line. Are you trying to protect the guy? It's like, no, he hasn't been back here. But Red's like, no, it's good. We're all good. They were betrayed just like we were, so let's keep it cool. We'll keep our deal up, but also, once again, keeping the Blue Battalion here so they can keep you in line. And it's like, you know, and I think it was C that was trying to, like, stand up to them, but he was immediately cut down. And it's like, yeah, you're, like, powerless in front of them. And that's what pissed F off more, to the point he went down to start stuff. Because that's what caught D's attention. It's like, wait, why would there be a monster attack? It's not even a Sunday. It's just because F couldn't stand it. So it makes you wonder, will there be any repercussions that the others suffer because of this? You know, because F was able to kind of sneak off on his own. But then it's like, maybe this will benefit the Keepers in the grand scheme of things, because now it just shows, like it just adds more validity to their heroism and their accolades. But like I also brought up earlier too, I'm not completely clear if that's indicating that F is dead, or whether he got sent back to the fortress. That in itself is unclear. It felt kind of permadeath-y, but once again, who knows the extent of their healing abilities and just the destruct. I mean, it seemed pretty crazy, like the Orochi attack that the Red Keeper used, but it's like, who knows what that means against a Duster. Like, they're not that strong, but that healing factor, that immortality, you know, I'm sure there's limits to it, but we haven't really fully known what those limits are yet. So next episode should give us clarity on whether or not F is dead or not. So D didn't seem too devastated, so it seemed like it's just like he probably did just get sent back to the fortress. But maybe for him, it's like, maybe I have another ally, another dissenter, like, not happy about. I mean, a lot of people aren't happy about the current situation, but once again, it's self-preservation. So what else can they do in the might of all this power? So I think, like I said, that's where D's story is going to come into play, understanding their infrastructure and potentially putting them in a position where they can have the leg up. So It's definitely going to be interesting to see where the next episode ultimately ends up taking us going forward with all this. I'm curious to see what other reveals and developments we get. But really, that's all I wanted to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.